Welcome to the recorded version of the Grantmakers and Aging Web Seminar, the Age Strong Initiative, a private-philanthropic partnership helping grantmakers increase impact, from March 30th, 2016. This event was made possible by a partnership between Grantmakers and Aging, the John A. Hartford Foundation, the AARP Foundation, Capital Impact Partners, and the Calvert Foundation. Technical and production support is provided by the American Society on Aging.
Thanks very much, Steve, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. Today's presentation is entitled Age Strong, a private philanthropic partnership helping grantmakers increase impact. And as Steve said, I am the CEO of Grantmakers and Aging, and I'm delighted to have almost 300 of you today on today's program. Before we begin, we want to thank the John A. Hartford Foundation, whose continuing support allows us to provide this webinar series free of charge to our audience. We also want to thank today's co-sponsors, the AARP Foundation, Capital Impact Partners, and the Calvert Foundation. Local and regional funders search for ways to increase their impact in underserved communities through partnerships, but often these are limited in their scope and in their capacity. To overcome some of these hurdles, several major organizations have come together to create a new initiative called Age Strong to serve low-income older persons. In today's webinar, we'll hear insights into the impact that the initiative is creating through specific examples, and also discuss how you, as both as institutions and organizations, but also as individuals, can participate. We're very pleased to have with us three experts representing the organizations who have come together around this initiative. Dan Soliman is the lead on impact programs at the AARP Foundation. Tanya Rakpraja is the director of strategic lending initiatives at Capital Impact Partners. And Justin Conway is vice president of investment partnerships at the Calvert Foundation. So Dan, as we move to the next slide, let's start with you. Please set the stage for us about the aging landscape and why the AARP Foundation found a compelling need to move in this direction, and how you see this meeting the needs of the Foundation's mission in meeting the needs of lower income individuals.
Sure. Thank you very much, John, and good morning or afternoon. If you could go to the next slide, please. And then one right after that. Fantastic. All right. So here we just show basically what's going on in the U.S. right now. America's not ready for the future. I mean, we hear about it a lot. Americans, on average, are getting older, and unfortunately, they're getting poorer. I mean, the Foundation commissioned some research from the Harvard Joint Center 2 years ago, really outlined this well. And, there's going to be about twice as many people over the age of 50 in the next 25 years. Couple that with the Great Recession and a lot of older adults especially losing a lot of their wealth that was in their homes. There might be... we call it a lot of the times the silver tsunami. This is also probably a great opportunity. But with this opportunity, we have to change the way we do business. Business as usual will not just get it done. We have to look at, sort of being innovators, being disruptors, and using impact investing as a tool, in complementary to grants and other government programs to really figure out how to harness the power of the capital markets to bring about some effective solutions. And so this is what we're going to look at. And if you go to the next slide, please. So you might be thinking, what is impact investing? Impact investing, in a nutshell, is like any other financial instrument. A CD, your 401k, it's tied to financial return. It's not a grant in any way, shape, or form. What it also has, in addition to the financial return, it has a social return. Now, that can be a green return, that could be, helping kids read, that can have keeping an older adult in their home, whatever that social return might be. And in sort of the world of impact investing, there's two main types of impact investments. There's mission-related investments, which have a market rate return plus a social return. as well as program-related investments, which we'll focus on here in this conversation, which has a below-market rate return plus a social return. And they're also called PRIs. So you might be wondering, well, why pick a PRI over an MRI as a foundation? And so what we were more interested in the social return. And what PRIs do a lot is they mitigate the risk to the private investors to come into the deal for whatever shape or form. So, if they want like a 10% return and you can only present, X percent, we put in this extra money up front to mitigate their risk to ensure that the deal goes forward. There's also various tax advantages to that, and you could talk to your CFOs and other about that. But we really wanted to get to the programmatic aspects of this. So, next slide, please. So the AARP Foundation. So the AARP Foundation is a charitable arm of AARP. Our vision is that we would like to have a country free of poverty where no older adult feels vulnerable, and the mission that the foundation serves vulnerable older people by creating and advancing effective solutions to help them secure the essentials. These essentials at the foundation are looked at in sort of four areas: hunger, housing, income, and isolation. We do the traditional sort of nonprofit activities, convening, grant making, et cetera, but, through the leadership that started with Joanne Jenkins, as well as this continuing with and to take to the next level with Lisa Marsh Ryerson, we're looking to really disrupt the market and bring about systemic change. And again, this is what, we're looking at things that are scalable. And when we get to something that is an investable product, that's how we look at it as scalable and take it to the next level to really create that systemic change. So if you go to the next slide, please. So the history, how did the foundation start at this? It started in 2007 when we're just really getting our feet wet on this and saying, what is an impact investment and how can we get involved in this? And, in 2009, we made some, what I would call, classify as some lower investment risks, did some CDs and mutual funds and things of that nature. And in 2009, in 2012, we really wanted to sort of go a little bit further in and invest in CDFIs. Now, CDFIs are defined as community development finance institutions. Essentially, it's a social investment fund that's been certified by the U.S. Treasury. And in 2013 and 14, we made about 4 investments totaling about $3.7 million. And after that, if you go to the next slide, we had only a certain limited amount of money to do these types of investments. And we wanted to say, how can we really get the biggest bang for a buck? Again, we did these 4 investments in these CDFIs, Rock USA, which is focusing on manufactured housing communities, Enterprise Community Partners, which is an affordable housing investor, Living Cities Innovation Fund, which focuses on place-based funding, and Capital Impact Partners, which is a leader in housing, health, healthy foods, small businesses, and cooperatives. But again, we wanted to sort of do more, and we wanted to figure out, who are the most innovative players in the field. So what we did was we had an RFP that we sent out to 10 teams, and we got back some really great ones from both the for-profit and the nonprofit sector, and whittled it down to Capital Impact Partners and Calvert Foundation's submission, which, if you go to the next slide, basically talks about this is what Age Strong is. So Age Strong is an impact investment initiative. Our goal is to raise about $70 million. We have 2 great partners, Capital Impact Partners, which has done probably a little over $2 billion in investments nationwide, and the Calvert Foundation, which is another one of the largest CDFIs in the country, and is the only one that has a retail note that's open to the general public. Now, keep in mind that both Capital Impact Partners and Calvert Foundation, they serve 2 distinct functions in the Age Strong initiative. Capital Impact Partners, they're the ones, for lack of a better term, I call them, they're the deployment partners. They look for the deals, they make the investments on the ground. And then Calvert Foundation is they raise the capital. They're the capital raising partner. They're the ones who get the money, from the large amount of money from the institutions, from the retail investors, and take that and invest that into Calvert Foundation, or sorry, Capital Impact Partners. This is how we set it up. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what you guys think, and when you guys go through this presentation, to think about this sort of like a la carte. You know, this one or the other might work for you. You don't necessarily need to do both. This is just something to sort of, you know, spur conversation and getting to think about what can work in your community. And with that, I can turn that over back to John. John?
I'm sorry. Thank you, Dan. We appreciate the information about the Age Strong program and also why the foundation has become involved in this. Before I move on, I want to remind all of you that we will have time at the end for questions, and you can start typing your questions into the box at the right side of your screen. You will see a question box, and you just open that up and you type in, and we will be asking your questions after the presentations are completed. So at this point, Tanya, I'd love to bring you in, representing Capital Impact Partners. Could you tell us a little bit more about Capital Impact Partners and how you were working in this project using your community development background?
Absolutely. Thank you, John and Grantmakers and Aging for hosting, and everyone for joining us today. Capital Impact Partners is identifying and making investments for Age Strong. We are a nonprofit community development financial institution, as Dan had mentioned, which means that we are a mission-driven lender that works with low and moderate income communities across the U.S. to establish critical services and jobs that lead to thriving communities and economic opportunity. Through our lending nationally, we support a variety of community development projects, from community health centers that provide health care to low-income and uninsured families, to charter schools that provide quality education options, to healthy food retailers in limited access areas. As the fund manager and lender for Age Strong, we are financing and scaling new models that support low-income aging populations to age in place, as well as models that transform long-term care. The next slide, please. And the next one after that. And one more. Great. The Capital Impact Partners has done a lot to scale aging models that work. We've developed the National Village to Village Network, a peer-to-peer network that engages volunteers to allow older adults to age in their homes. There are currently 160 villages in 41 states. We've scaled the Greenhouse Replication Initiative. Greenhouses are a resident-centered model for skilled nursing and assisted living care in a small home-like setting centered around a hearth in the living room. We've also worked with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation on the Coming Home Project to find dignified assisted living solutions for low-income adults, resulting in 3,600 affordable housing units, primarily in rural communities. So we've spent a lot of time thinking about what works in aging. As well, over our 30-year history, we've invested over $2 billion, over $100 million of which have been for aging projects. Given the sharp demographic shifts that Dan spoke about towards older adults over the next 20 years, we know that new models of care are needed so that we can all age with dignity, and that at the same time, philanthropic and government funding alone won't be enough to support demand. Next slide. So a Capital Impact Partner takes a community development approach to aging based on a premise that what is good for older adults is good for the whole community. Examples of community-based services that support aging in place include healthy food enterprises that provide healthy foods in limited access areas. An example SCIP has financed is LA Kitchen, which cooks healthy meals and brings them to a predominantly low-income older adult population, including 4 senior centers. At the same time, LA Kitchen trains youth and formerly incarcerated individuals culinary skills and runs an incubator for food entrepreneurs. Another example are community health centers that make accessible a range of health care and care coordination in culturally appropriate settings. Lifelong Medical Center, a longtime capital impact borrower, is an example. Lifelong runs an over 60 health center in Oakland, California that combines a health center with subsidized independent living housing and a PACE adult day health care site. Additionally, we are looking to finance more PACE and adult day health facilities that provide wraparound services for older adults. PACE, which stands for Program for All-Inclusive Care to the Elderly, coordinates all needed primary, acute, and long-term care services so that older individuals can continue living in the community. Through Age Strong, we are looking to show connectivity of model. So that could be a health center that coordinates a variety of care services and collaborates with other healthcare providers and community-based organizations. A mobile market that can offer fresh food in places that seniors already frequent. A grocery store that is also a community meeting point offering financial services, classes on healthy shopping and cooking, and the primary care clinic. These projects provide the support that individuals need to age in their community. For housing, Capital Impact Partners finances cooperatives, for example, Rocky Ridge State communities where residents living in manufactured homes can purchase their land through a cooperative model, thereby preserving affordability and building assets. As well, we support small home models of long-term care, which places the resident care at the center of the model. On the next slide, I'd like to talk about some of the projects we've actually financed through Age Strong itself. Next slide, please. So here's a grocery store in West Philadelphia where Age Strong provided a $3.6 million loan to 2 ShopRite grocery stores in West Philadelphia. The stores provide healthy foods and services in an area where there is a large concentration of low-income older adults. Within 1 mile of one of the stores, approximately a third of the residents live in poverty, and the median household income is $17,300. Over half of the households are led by an older adult who earns less than 80% AMI, which is the population that we're really trying to serve through this program. So could we just go back to the last slide? Oh, I just want to mention that this grocery store here in this picture is an example of stores that are also community gathering places. So this grocery store incorporates a credit union and pharmacy on site, specialty prepared food offerings, and a large variety of fresh produce and seafood. The next slide, please. This is another investment that we've made through Age Strong. This is a greenhouse that's located in Colorado. And as I mentioned before, greenhouses are this model of small home skilled nursing or assisted living care where the resident is really the focus of how the small home is built and how the services are provided. And in fact, Colorado has one of the fastest growing aging populations in the U.S. where over the next 15 years, the number of people 60 or older is expected to more than double. We recently made a $2.2 million loan for the reconstruction of a new nursing home in the Washington County town of Akron, Colorado. The construction here will replace an outdated traditional nursing facility with a radically new model for skilled nursing care. The facility will include homes for 40 residents, 50% of whom are low-income people covered by Medicaid. The project will also create 8 permanent jobs and 140 construction jobs, helping to boost the local economy. We are also in the process of closing another greenhouse in Detroit. This greenhouse is an assisted living facility, and all residents will participate in a PACE program. This project is unique because it gets around Medicaid regulations in Michigan, which prohibit an individual from using Medicaid to live in an assisted living facility and to enroll in PACE. So effectively, residents in this greenhouse will be moved from skilled nursing facilities to assisted living so that they can receive a more appropriate level of care while continuing to be enrolled in PACE. We all know the numerous benefits of being in a setting with an appropriate level of care as we age. Next slide. So community development financial institutions like CIP help community organizations reach their next stage of growth by filling gaps left by traditional banks. I think people are often not necessarily aware that impact-focused lenders exist to place foremost importance on the mission of the organization. Age Strong is not a one-size-fits-all solution. The products that we develop are flexible. We understand the unusual nature of nonprofit financing and funding. We spend a lot of time working with the individuals and the borrowers to understand their needs as a borrowing organization. Capital Impact is also focused on innovation and new models of care as we think about financing. We look across sectors and silos. So currently, with this partnership, with the support of ARP Foundation, CIP is conducting market assessments and engaging with industry partners to really understand what are the future needs of older adults. For example, we are convening community health centers and other healthcare providers, including community-based transition and care coordinators, researchers, and hospitals, to discuss solutions for expanding community health services to an aging population. And we look forward to providing financing for these new models of care. So while CIP identifies and makes investments, Calvert Foundation raises the capital for us to do that. And I'll turn this back to John.
Well, thank you very much, Tanya. That's a very helpful background as well. And once again, before we move on to Justin, I do want to remind you that we will be having questions at the end of our presentation today. And you can type those into the question box. You just open that box that's on the right-hand side of your screen and type your questions in, and I'll be reading those to our presenters a little bit later. So at this point, Justin, let's turn to you and tell us a little bit about the role that the Calvert Foundation has and how program-related investments like Age Strong provide social and financial benefits.
Okay, great. I think we might want to move to the next slide. Hi, everyone. I'm Justin Conway. Here at Calvert Foundation, we've been working on providing supportive housing and access to affordable health care and healthy foods in communities for over 20 years. And we're excited to partner with the groups you've just heard from on creating a way that people and organizations can invest in support of those and other interventions needed for people to be able to age strong, hence the name of the program. Next slide. As some background on us, Calvert Foundation is a nonprofit investment firm helping people and institutions to invest to meet real community needs, so housing, education, healthcare, job creation, and more. We mainly do this through an investment security called the Community Investment Note that connects investors to the great work happening throughout the U.S. and in over 80 countries by community-based organizations that we partner with. And in Age Strong's case, 100% of the investments go to support the projects that Tanya was mentioning that the Capital Impact Partners is identifying. The Community Investment Note is a fixed income security, has more than a 20-year track record, and at that time has 100% repayment to the more than 15,000 investors we've worked with. And we've really worked to try to make it convenient for folks with low minimums and in line with how people are looking to invest, how they're already investing, whether that's online, whether that's through the mail with checks, or with their financial advisor in brokerage and in IRA accounts. But certainly what makes this opportunity so special is providing a channel to support the partners and the projects that are really on the ground in communities serving the needs of aging populations. Next slide. To be a little more clear on how this works, so really the first step is that people and organizations invest in the Age Strong initiative through the Community Investment Note. And then 100% of the investment dollars are then put to work by capital impact partners and in the projects that serve people over the age of 50. And then as those projects and the organizations repay their loans, we then are able to repay our investors. But I would highlight here that even if something does happen with a particular loan that is made, the partners here and Calvert Foundation, we have reserves and stand behind making the timely payments to the investors. Next slide. So overall, Calvert Foundation has really set it up and worked over the years to kind of manage and mitigate the risk to investors. And that is important for us so that the Community Investment Note can be suitable for all types of individual and institutional investors. We've worked with more than 15,000 investors who, through us, have invested over $1.2 billion in the last 20 years. Certainly, they've all been repaid on time, but their money has really been put to great use by the different community organizations we work with. I know that many of you on the phone might represent organizations yourselves, and we've worked with hundreds of nonprofits and foundations to use investment as a way to advance their mission. Our note is often considered the gateway or one of the first impact investments that a person or an organization might use in kind of a program-related or mission-related context, as was mentioned earlier. But basically, regardless of the type or the situation, perhaps, of the investor, we've tried to make it convenient for folks to take action and get involved. There are three main ways that investors can do that. So one is people can invest with as little as $1,000 through the mail with a check. But most of our investors really invest through brokerage accounts or their retirement accounts, because that's where many of them have the majority of their investment dollars. And that can be done with or without a financial advisor. And we also have a very low minimum, a $20 minimum online through the agestronginvest.org website where people can get involved. Next slide. So beyond the impact that this has in communities, and that's certainly why we're all gathered here today and why we put this together, but one of the great things through this initiative is that we get to work with investors who really are so excited to be able to put their financial resources to work supporting causes and communities they care about. You can see a statement here from one of the Age Strong investors, Keith. But more recently, I was just speaking with a woman in Massachusetts. She's 88 years old, healthy as can be, and was fortunate in terms of her own financial position. Bo was telling me about how so many of her friends in her age range, people she knew from church and in her community, weren't as fortunate. They hadn't had the same level of income. They hadn't had an inheritance like she was fortunate to have. Some just hadn't properly planned financially or had been really affected by the recent financial downturn. And then those folks were really struggling to make ends meet. And so she was thrilled to be able to invest, use some of the resources she had to support the needs of other seniors and help them meet their needs through this initiative. Next slide. So overall, we think Age Strong is an opportunity through an investment opportunity to receive consistent financial returns along with exciting social outcomes. All the partners here, AARP, ARP Foundation, Capital Impact Partners, are really committed to the social impact reporting so that investors can see what their dollars are doing, We regularly report on new projects, impact metrics, the stories, the photos, etc., that show H-Strong investor dollars at work. And certainly look forward to people's questions. But with that, I'll turn it back over to John.
Well, thanks so much, Justin, and thanks for the great work in the project that all of you are doing. At this point, we will have an opportunity to spend a considerable amount of time on the many questions that you've already sent in. But just as a reminder, we would still love to have your questions in addition. So just open the question box that's on the right side of your screen and type your questions in. So I'm going to start with a general question that someone submitted, and then we'll turn to a number of much more specific items, which is why did the three of your organizations come together around this? What did you see that was missing that having the three of you together makes possible? And Tanya, you want to start with that one?
Sure. I think the mission of our three organizations is really what brought us together, and it is the combination of understanding the need for age-friendly communities and services for low-income older adults as the nation ages, and the real power of investments that understand the needs of these nonprofit organizations who are trying to create these age-friendly communities to have a real impact in this area. And so, the vision really started with AARP Foundation to create a fund where we can deploy capital and have an impact using investments, and then Capital Impact Partners and Calvert Foundation, who have worked together in the past, really came together thinking that we can bring together our own strengths, so capital impact on the lending side and our history and the thinking we've done on age-friendly models and new models for aging, and then Calvert Foundation's work on investments and impact investing.
Justin or Dan, anything to add to that?
I would say from the foundation's perspective, when we were looking at doing the RFP, we didn't really see a fund out there that focused on the low-income 50-plus nationally in sort of a holistic way. There are housing funds, there are, sort of healthcare funds, but looking at sort of those four tenets, we go back to the housing, hunger, income, and isolation, and how to look at all those in both an impact investing lens as well as the low-income 50-plus lens. And when we looked at, sort of not only like the market, but, the submissions, we really thought that we could create something really special here with these three organizations and really really do some interesting deals throughout the country.
Right. Go ahead, Justin.
No, I would just echo that, it's really that we're really mission aligned and we bring complementary strengths, I think, to the table. And it's just exciting to kind of get folks, really private capital, so individual and organizational investment dollars at work in a new way. This has been done in many ways, as it has been mentioned, philanthropically, but to be able to address the needs in low-income 50-plus people through an investment vehicle, hopefully is kind of a new, exciting tool that folks will be interested in.
Well, let's stay with you, Justin, for this next question then. Is there a total pool size that you're aiming towards? Is there a certain amount of money that you're trying to raise? And what are there minimum investments that could an individual write you an investment check for $100, or does it have to really be at a bigger level? And are you mainly looking towards institutions to fund this overall project?
Great. So we're really looking to raise and deploy $70 million into projects. And so Capital Impact Partners is really finding those organizations that can meet the needs in the communities. And so as they're building out that pipeline through the initiative, we're really focused on raising that from investors. And so we know it'll take a lot of investors of various sizes and shapes to get to that $70 million goal that we have. And so the minimum investment starts at $20 online. So we do have some that are investing $20. Our average online investment is a little over $500 in this initiative right now. But we're also working with investors that are putting a little more to work. So they're investing $1,000 by checking us, or they're working with their financial advisor and putting in significantly more. The woman I was referenced in Massachusetts, she was looking to invest $250,000 to $300,000. So that's a pretty significant individual investor right there. But our average investment through the brokerage channel is about $25,000. So it's really aggregating the different investors, kind of where they are, allowing everyone hopefully to be able to, at a minimum level that they can access getting engaged, and then trying to really build up to that $70 million goal that all of us have.
Thanks. Tanya, there's actually quite a number of questions that I think you probably would be the one to answer in terms of the kinds of organizations you're looking for when you're reaching out to find people that would be appropriate for this. So could you tell us a little bit more about both that process and then also the criteria? So to make it clear, this is a loan program, not a grant program. So, how do you decide on the, I guess, creditworthiness of organizations? How do you find them? Do you know them already, or do they come to you? And what's the process that you're using at this point?
Right. Yes, so that's absolutely right. This is a loan program, and we provide loans to a whole range of different organizations, for-profit and nonprofit, who are providing the types of services that we know will serve a low-income older adult population. So these can be, again, nonprofits or for-profits, social service providers, healthcare providers, skilled nursing facilities. It could be facilities that are providing healthy food access, for example. Just the range of social service providers or providers in a community. In terms of identifying borrowers, there at the end of the slide will be contact information for somebody to contact if you do have a project in mind that you want to vet with one of our business development officers. But we do attend a number of conferences, do presentations at those conferences. We have a network of borrowers that we've worked with in the past and other partners who aren't necessarily borrowers, but partners that we've worked with through our 30-year history of being a lender for low-income communities. So that's the one way that we do bring in business. And we do webinars like this to help get the word out and welcome any conversation with somebody who thinks they have a project that they would like to have financed through this program. So our processes, of course, this program itself is focused on services for a low-income aging population, and so that is something that we, look at and evaluate because we are a mission-based or mission-driven lender, and that's, it's an important aspect of the projects that we do support. Then we also work with the borrower to understand the business model of the borrower, understand the cash flows. We look at financial statements, financial projections to evaluate the creditworthiness of the project itself. But unlike the traditional banks, we are very familiar with working with nonprofits. It is our mission and our goal, and so we're able to spend the time. We do spend the time to work with the borrower, but we also provide flexible terms that work for the borrower. So that could be anything from higher loan-to-value ratios to longer amortizations or lower debt service coverage ratios in order to just figure out how the financing can meet the needs of the borrower.
Well, thanks. And I think you all see that on the screen right now. The second contact information is for Capital Impact. If you have a specific interest in talking to them about whether or not your organization or others that you know are applicable to this process. Dan, I have several questions related to the way in which foundations utilize their funding. We know that most foundations have historically been most comfortable with direct grant funding, where you give the money away. This is somewhat different than that, in that there is a return on the investment. Do you have advice to foundations and to foundation finance committees who often are concerned about making sure they maximize the return on the foundation's endowment investments and so forth? What was the discussion in the ARP Foundation's consideration of this that led you to move towards this kind of mechanism?
Sure. Well, so I would say first, just looking at sort of that, the mission-related investment and the program-related investment. The nice thing about program-related investment is for the overwhelming majority of foundations, it counts towards their 5% disbursement. So, that could be sort of complementary to your grant program, the grant program. So when AARP looked at this, I mean, we talked to a lot of other foundations who, frankly, were doing it a lot longer than us. Ford Foundation, MacArthur Foundation, Mission Investors Exchange was excellent. We actually ended up setting up an investment committee just for this and a process to do it. So it was, everything is sort of well thought out, and there is a process to look at deals. And I think I would say the best advice is to, talk to people. I'd be more than happy to talk to any foundations who are interested in doing this. Like I said, Mission Investors Exchange and was really fantastic in helping us think through a lot of these issues. And then, just sort of take it step by step. Maybe your board is very well versed in finance and they're sort of like good to go. Other ones, they might not know what impact investing is or how this might relate to, endowment or portfolio, et cetera. So, and like I said, if you look from that timeline, it started in 2007, and we sort of moved along and dipped our toe in with CDs, et cetera, and then sort of moved on to other types of investments. And I think that's, sort of, based on, what your board and the senior leadership wants to do, how fast they are able to move. There's some great resources out there. And the nice thing about this field is it's not like a hedge fund. It's not like people are uber competitive. We want to get more people into the space, and the more people in there, the better collaboration, the more good will get done.
Thanks. I couldn't possibly agree more. A number of questions going back to you, Tanya, about the mechanism for payback and so forth. You mentioned that there was some flexibility on this, but obviously the program needs to be able to generate income to provide repayment of these. But someone mentioned that some of the examples that you were using were more bricks and mortar oriented. So are things that are more, not things you can feel and touch, Meals on Wheels, other social services, or other kinds of things. Are those also programs that you would consider in this program?
Yeah, so it is true that, a part of the lending that we do is around real estate acquisition, construction, and property improvement. We also do equipment purchases and working capital. And in fact, so there are actually two phases to the lending that we're doing for Age Strong. The first phase, which we started last year, is mostly focused on real estate-backed type of transactions, the bricks and the mortars, for the organizations providing services in communities where we would like to see more of these services. There's a phase 2 that we've been researching over the last year to look at the future needs and other needs of an aging population. And in that area, we're looking at sectors in areas such as technology and workforce development and jobs and ways to support asset building within the community of folks that we would like to provide services for. And so that type of lending moves further away from the bricks and the mortar, and we're looking at how to provide the financing for other types of needs.
Okay. Would that include things like, rent subsidies or for individuals, or also gap funding for construction projects? Or are you willing to sort of look outside of the usual boxes, or do you have a certain set of things that you're looking for initially?
So as a lender, primarily collateral is something that we do look at. And then, of course, the borrower's ability to pay back the loan and cash flows is something else that we look at. But aside from that, we would look at, a range of projects. Gap financing for construction is something that, that is within the wheelhouse of what we do. So if you do have a project that you're looking for funding for, of course, strong financials and an ability for us to, be assured that the borrower will be able to pay that back is critical, because we are also looking at the investors who are investing in this program. But if you do have a program, certainly do get in touch with us.
Okay.
We'd be happy to talk to you about the project.
Okay, great. Justin, is this something that individuals can invest their own retirement accounts in? I think you mentioned something along those lines. And, obviously you're looking for a range of possible contributions here, but are you seeing one group coming in more aggressively than others at this point?
Sure. So maybe I'll work backwards in that question. But we certainly are seeing foundations and some other nonprofit organizations who have put in some of the larger initial dollars into this, right? They're investing $25,000 or $250,000 one, considering multi-million-dollar investment, because it's so mission aligned with their focus. But we are working with a range of organizations for sure, but also the majority in terms of numbers, at least, of the support comes from individual investors. And so there are a number of ways they can get involved, but certainly one of the common options, because they have a lot of their investment dollars already there, is, one of the questions we get is, can we actually do this in our retirement accounts? And so the answer is yes. So the Age Strong initiative is available through our community investment note, which is an option at most, if not all, brokerage firms and platforms. And so our note can be held in any self-directed IRA account where you are able to choose, the different securities, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, et cetera. Well, our community investment note and Age Strong is one of the options there. And we're certainly seeing some growing interest in putting those those retirement dollars to use in this way.
Okay. Great. A question back to Dan and from a foundation that is currently limited to the traditional grants kind of model for investments. I think the person who's asking the question would like for their foundation to move in this direction, but are there ways in which grant funding can supplement this kind of approach? Are you seeing collaborations with grant funders in local areas that supplement the kind of programs that you're doing with the nonprofits that are getting loans through this program?
Yeah, well, I mean, actually, AARP Foundation is doing that. In the phase 2 that Tanya alluded to. We did give some grant money because there are the traditional business lines that CIP is very good at, but we wanted to push them and see what the really innovative things that they could come up with. Just for example, doing the market study, paying for the staff time around that, helping put together the first loss capital on that, and that could easily be grant funding. So there is a lot of ways to do that from a traditional grant perspective, and it's definitely needed. It's not like a lot of this stuff, the deals go without just strictly an investment capital. A lot of them, especially just in typical affordable housing these days, the deals can get up to like 15 to 20 different sources, and some of them are grant-funded sources, really just depending on the market and and the reality of the deal. So there's a wide array of options if you're limited to grant funding, and I'd be more than happy to talk with that person offline.
Okay, great.
I would like to echo that. So for the various programs that Capital Impact Partners puts together, we often work with the same foundation on a PRI or a loan to us in order to further re-lend to borrowers, but also we oftentimes work with the grant side. So the grant can come in various ways. And so it could serve as, for example, it could serve as a debt service reserve on the lending that's occurring, or credit enhancement that allows us to make even riskier loans to borrowers who we think are doing really innovative, high-impact projects. We've worked with foundations on providing grant funds for, say, TA, for us to work with specific borrowers who maybe don't have the experience of putting together financial projections and such in order to move a loan through a loan approval process, or grant funds to help with construction management on a project. We can also use grant funds for interest rate buy-downs on a loan to help make the loan even more affordable for the borrower. So there's lots of ways that we can combine both the lending as well as the grant to support high-impact projects that we are doing the work we want to see.
Yeah, I think as certainly you are deeply aware of, and I think some people are increasingly aware of, many of these efforts require a great deal of sophistication in terms of the variety of funding sources and bringing them together and presenting financial information in a business-like way. Are you finding that you're able to find partners for these kinds of programs at this point? Are there opportunities for funders to help nonprofits, develop ways to talk to lenders and others in a more productive way? I'll direct that one back to Tanya.
Yes, I think part of the work that we do, we often do work with borrowers who maybe haven't taken out debt before. So part of it is, getting people used to the lending process, and oftentimes we're a stepping stone, so that we might be the first lender, given that we're a mission-driven lender that a borrower goes to. But we hope that over time, that borrower, as they become more financially sophisticated, can graduate onto a traditional lender. So we do play that role, and we've partnered with other organizations, be it foundations or TA providers, in different ways on different programs in order to provide the range of support that borrowers need.
Well, thank you. We have a large number of other questions. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to them all today. I do want to return to our wonderful speakers today to ask them to give us their final words of wisdom. And Dan, we'll start with you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, John. We really appreciated the opportunity, and thank you for Grantmakers and Aging to making this possible. I think at the end of the day, this is impact investment is just another tool in the toolbox. It's not there to sort of replace grants. It's there to really supercharge them. And if you think about it, everyone wants to look at public-private partnerships and bring in new players into the space. And this is a way to do this. For every deal, there is a public and private partner in here. And in every deal, there is a way to sort of not only make the investments and make a benefit to, that community and the people who are going to benefit from that deal, but also create advocates and new stakeholders in that. And that's where we see really impact investment going, and where it has gone and where it will be. And bringing more investors into the space will only make it much stronger and can hopefully lead to some real big systemic change.
Tanya?
I hope that here we've been able to describe the potential impact and value that investments can have in creating an environment that we all want to age in, and have been able to provide some concrete examples of projects that are currently doing that. I do think this partnership in particular is really unique, and it's something that Capital Impact Partners is very excited about. It's really the strength in a partnership like this that the strength is really in finding partners who are similarly mission aligned, and it's our common goals that allow us to have success at having the impact that we want to see. So I think it's that combination. I think there should be a takeaway that investments can really have a deep impact in the communities we care about, and that strong mission-aligned partnerships can make that happen. You leverage the strength of the various partners.
Justin, how about you?
Sure. Thanks, John, and Grantmakers and Aging, and certainly great to partner with AARP Foundation and Capital Impact Partners. Appreciate everybody's time. Hope folks have perhaps gathered some new ideas on how they can have an impact in meeting the needs of aging communities. Hope Age Strong provides some new value and a new way for people to engage. But please let us know what you think, any of us. I know Dan, Tanya, myself would really look forward to continuing the conversation, answering any questions that you have. So please be in touch on any questions or ideas.
Well, thanks. I want to thank Dan Soliman, the lead of impact programs at the AARP Foundation, Tanya Rakpraja, the Director of Strategic Lending Initiatives at Capital Impact Partners, and Justin Conway, Vice President of Investment Partnerships at Calvert Foundation, for their participation today. I want to thank you for all that you do to make life better for older adults. I also want to thank the John A. Hartford Foundation, the AARP Foundation, Capital Impact Partners, and Calvert Foundation for their support of this program. And I also want to thank our partners at the American Society on Aging for their wonderful work on the technical issues related to this webinar. We will be making this presentation available to anyone who wishes to view it later, including both the slides and the audio. Watch for the rebroadcast link on our Grantmakers and Aging website, or drop us a line at info@GIAging, that's GIAGING.org. Our next webinar is on elder economic disparity, looking at both the problem and workable approaches, and that will be on Friday, April the 22nd from 2 to 3 Eastern Time. And finally, I want to thank all of you for participating in today's webinar. Have a great day.